Welcome to Retire Coast, where we discuss all things retirement, life on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and your financial welfare. Bill Anderson, your host, is a serial entrepreneur having created many successful businesses and holds a real estate broker's license, speaks about personal experiences with each topic. Listen, learn, and improve the quality of your life.
Once again, welcome back. Our topic today will be the ultimate guide to starting a business after retirement. Now, a lot of you out there have thought at one time or another that perhaps you would start a business, maybe when you were in your 20s or you were in your 30s, and some of you did, a few, but the rest of you that had considered it probably years ago are now starting to maybe think when you retire you want to do something with your time and maybe make a few dollars. So maybe it's a side hustle, or you want to just do something that is meaningful to you. So the idea of starting a business after retirement, for many, they would probably just kind of hit a roadblock saying, oh, well, you can't really do that after you retire. You can't do that. You know, all these mental restrictions out there. Oh, you're too old, you're too this, you're too this. You can just keep on going until you just put yourself up against a wall. So I'm here to tell you that I have done exactly what I'm going to express today in this article, which, by the way, is on our website, on our blog site, and that is retirecoast.com. The article title is The Ultimate Guide to Starting a Business After Retirement. But one article just wasn't going to do it, and I thought about this ahead. I have so many decades, and I've started so many companies, and successful companies prior to even the idea of a retirement, that I thought perhaps this needs a lot more detail. I thought about the complexity of starting a business, and I wanted to make it simple so people wouldn't just say, oh, that's too much work or too much effort. And it's really not. It's not difficult as long as you have a roadmap, and I'm going to try to give you that in a series of articles that just take it in essentially bite-sized pieces and then move it forward. Because the idea of retirement in the traditional sense is that you've got this career that you've been doing out there, whether you're a bricklayer or you're a programmer, and you've been doing this thing for decades. And now you are in your 60s, perhaps, maybe even early 70s, and you decide it's time to retire, quote, and I'll put the quotes around the retirement. And that just simply means that you're leaving that task that you've been doing for a long, long time. And for many, there will be a sense of emptiness after you leave. So it's very important that you think about this earlier, the better, and start to plan for filling that time. Now, the idea that you're going to go sit on the beach and have an umbrella drink is attractive, and maybe you do that for a couple of weeks. But for most people that have worked for years and years and years, they want something to do. Now, let me tell you what usually happens. So you just kind of hang around the house for a while, and you've got all these honeydew projects that you just hadn't gotten around to, and you fix this and you fix that, or you have it fixed by a contractor, and you're supervising, and you're sitting around drinking a beer. You're doing a lot of barbecuing. Maybe you go out and do some walking, that kind of thing. But it doesn't really fulfill you. So starting a business gives you something to do. It gives you goals. You set the goals, and then you can measure the goals. It's for a lot of people that need some structure in their life. You can create structure by creating your own business. And that's what I want to get into with this series that we're starting here. Now, the first one, as I said, The Ultimate Guide to Starting a Business After Retirement, is really designed to give you an overview of what you can do, just some ideas. So let me tell you what we really start with. So there's, top 10 reasons why seniors create a business after retirement. And I'll tell you what they are quickly, and you can read this in the article. One is financial stability and supplementing the income. Now, these are top 10, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the top one of the top 10. Pursuing a passion or a hobby, staying active and engaged, utilizing decades of experience, desire for personal fulfillment, flexibility and control, leaving a legacy, combating loneliness, adapting a longer life to a longer life expectancy, and responding to market opportunities. And I'm going to tell you something you probably didn't know. Seniors who create businesses after retirement do so at a much greater number than people who are younger than retirement. Believe it or not. That means that you've got people in their 20s all the way up to, say, the 50s, that you think about all those businesses that are being created. More businesses are being created by seniors like you after retirement than before retirement. That's a fact. So we've got a couple of charts in here that give you some information about why the motivation for seniors versus young people and how it changes. And so the key differences between retirees starting businesses and younger people are risk tolerance. Young people tend to be more risk tolerant. And we'll talk about risk as we go through here, because as you're a senior and you have your retirement income, risk is not the same as when you're younger. For example, you've probably been told in terms of investments, say in the stock market, that type of thing, to reduce the risk. Don't go for the most aggressive things. And there's no reason for you to take huge risks in starting your business. There's really some businesses you take almost no risk or zero risk at all. And so what we'll do is we'll get into some of the frequently asked questions. For example, is it a good idea to start a business after retirement? Absolutely. It's all about your health, actually. And most of us, anyway, and really most of us that start into retirement, particularly those of you that start into retirement in your 60s, if you're retiring because of the time at work and you're eligible for Social Security, and if for non-health reasons, you could have just kept on working if you wanted to, probably. Some people have to leave at a certain point, maybe there's a limit at your company or you're working for the government or something. But next step is, so what are the best business ideas for retirees? All right, so you want one that has no risk. How about dog walking? Believe it or not, that's a real business. Now, it's probably more of a business in the cities, but even in the suburbs, even where I live in a development, there are people who get paid to walk dogs, and they've got like 7 or 8 dogs out there, and they're walking their dogs every day. The investment to walk the dog is pretty small. I would suggest probably you buy some food bowls and you buy some kibble, and you maybe invest in some leashes, but they probably already have those at the house. So it really doesn't cost you very much at all to start with, and maybe that's the kind of a part-time thing that you want to do. So blogging, it doesn't cost much to get a website up and start blogging and selling something on the internet. A lot of people have made a lot of money doing that. There's no reason why you shouldn't. Just because you're a senior doesn't mean you can't learn about this. It's not something that just comes in the DNA of a 14-year-old, for example, although they tend to know a little bit more about it. Hey, so if you have grandchildren that can help you with this, great. So here's another question. Can I start a business if I'm living on a fixed retirement income? And the answer is absolutely. So I just harken back to the walking dogs or pet sitting, for example. A lot of people pay for pet sitting. Now, I used to pay the retired person across the street from me to take care of my cats when we were on vacation. And he would come over daily and just make sure the cats were okay, pet them, and and give them water and food. And we paid him for that. And that gave him the rest of the day to do anything he wanted to do. So he actually could have done that for many more people in the neighborhood. And if he had advertised that, he would have gotten a lot more business too. So again, these are just this kind of on the lower end. We'll get into some more viable things, or I guess that generate more money here in just a minute. But I wanted to talk about, it's not just the idea of starting a business, but what are the benefits of starting a business in retirement? Well, obviously the additional income. The social aspects are very important for a lot of people. If you were working in an environment, for an example, in an office where you had contact with people every day, and now after you've retired, your spouse is the only person you see on a daily basis, maybe a couple of neighbors, you probably missed that. You can get that back if you start a type of business that requires you to make contact with people, even if it's just on the phone. The other thing is keeping busy, and then for some people, just giving back. Now, it's funny how that works, because you can start a business, make some money. You can check off lots of boxes. You have the social aspect. You can keep busy. You can give back because you can help other people learn the business that you've already started, for example. And then maybe that business can go to a son or a daughter, or a niece or a nephew, someone else, after you decide that you're going to back out of it. That may be some years down the road. So how can I learn about starting a new business after retirement? Well, that's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion, because you can read these articles, which should give you plenty of information and take you step by step in the process. As you read part 2 and part 3 and part 4 of these articles, it will give you more and more of the details that you need. And in the meantime, you do some research on those things. And one of the questions that are asked of me on Quora, which is Quora.com, it's a site on the internet where people ask questions, and people who have the answers will answer them. I have answered thousands of questions, and I have had millions of people that have read my answers. And one of the questions that comes up in various forms is, can I start a business with no money? And I'll just wrap into that without experience too. It's kind of the same. So the answer is yes and yes. Again, I get back to the dog walking situation. And also there are some businesses where you might be able to start a business with using your credit card, with using some minor funds that you have. Maybe it doesn't cost a lot to get into the business, maybe a couple $1,000s or something. And that's what I call no money at all. Or perhaps the person that you're working with, if maybe there's a company that wants you to take over their business or something. There are lots and lots of opportunities I'm not going to get into here, but we'll express how those things can happen. As far as the experience issue is, look, you can teach yourself to become an expert in anything. All that information is now out there on the internet for you. So you can read and read and read and understand how to do anything you want to do, basically, and become an expert, because essentially that's what the colleges are doing today. A lot of that learning is on the internet, and while it takes them 4 years to get through college, think about this for a moment. So it takes 4 years or 5 years to get through college, but what are they learning in college? They're learning how to do math, they're learning all kinds of things, but the core things that are going to take them into a profession, that's a very, very small portion of all that time spent. Well, can you imagine you've got the time in where these students maybe spend an hour, 2 or 3 hours a week on a topic. You can spend 8 hours a day for days on this, and you can become an expert at a much faster rate than if you actually went to college to learn that thing. And once you become that expert, then you'll do really well, because then you're going to learn all the things that we're going to teach you here about the business aspect. So there's basically 2 things going on here with any business. One is the thing you're doing, which is, selling dog leashes, for example, and you've got this shop and it's got all kinds of dog leashes in there. So you have to learn the retail side, how that works, get the right property, market, etc. Then there is the business side of this, which is, how do I get started? What about licenses? What about permits? What about a business name? All those kinds of things. So there's 2 aspects here. You may be really, really good and knowledgeable in the item that you're going to market or sell, but you need some help on the business side. That's what we're here to do. So you spend your time learning that skill that you need on the product marketing side or service side, and then we're going to help you on the other side. Now, the key thing is to establish goals. You really need to get goals. And you've got to do lots of goals. And so what we did is we listed in here, let's see how many we have. We have 10 different sections of goals. Let me just give you one section of these. Financial goals. You need a break-even point. You need revenue targets, how much money you want to make, monthly, quarterly, and annual. Profit margin goals, what percentage of profitability do you want to gain? Funding goals, all right? If you're seeking investment, you have to determine how much capital is needed to launch or expand. And then what you want to do on the financial goals there is to be sure that you're making money. So, for young businesses, for that first year, perhaps maybe the goal is to use that break-even point. So if you're going to put in, say, $5,000 into your business, you want to make sure that you have earned that $5,000 back in that first year, or that you're earning a percentage of income back that is going to cover the amount that $5,000 was earning for you before you pulled it out of some type of an investment. So there's a little bit more to it than that, but this is just getting into it. Again, there's the customer acquisition goals, there's the product and service, marketing, branding, operations, customer service goals, personal development goals, and then we get into some things about the startup costs for your new business. And we cover that pretty well in here, and we talk about typical ranges of costs. So I'll just kind of throw one out for you. A home-based business or online business investment could be $2,000 to $10,000. And that's actually a good range, because if you don't know how to set up an online business, working from your home, you're going to have to pay someone to set that up for you, which is not difficult. And there are plenty of vendors out there, and we'll give you some direction on that so you can find someone to do that for you. But once that's set up, a lot of that is almost on automatic pilot. And the more you learn to do for yourself, the less you have to pay. Now, from my own example, I've always been a computer nerd. Back when the very first computers came out, and I mean the very first, even before the IBM computers came out, I was way, way ahead of anybody, and pretty much in my generation. And so I am very computer savvy with not just the hardware, but all the software. And then, of course, I have the advantage of a son who is a director of IT, who learned that's how he started. He worked for me and one of my businesses when he was in high school. He worked part-time on our computer system, and he is an expert. So that helped also. But I created multiple websites I use for different businesses, and I've enhanced those, and I've also done the podcast, as you can hear, and some YouTube videos and things like that, almost entirely on my own. However, for the first time, I hired a freelancer to help me create a project that I'll talk about in another podcast. But that was the first time, and he was great, inexpensive. I did most of the work. He just did part of the back-end work, and that took care of that. So that $2,000 to $10,000 is pretty reasonable, probably on the lower end if you work with someone who's not terribly expensive, So that's just the home-based business. Of course, if you don't have things like a computer and two monitors on your desk so you can go from one side to the other, you may have to spend a little bit of money kind of getting set up there. But a service-based business, anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000, you're talking about cleaning services, coaching or landscaping. Now, I happen to work with a number of people who do cleaning for vacation rentals because I'm involved in that business also. And I have expressed the desire for people to actually consider starting that cleaning businesses because there's always a shortage of that. And so that's fairly simple. If you are physically capable of doing that, you can start by yourself, probably you and your spouse, and start cleaning vacation rental properties. That requires you to purchase mops and some chemicals, things like that. So that's fairly inexpensive, and it's usually pretty good paying and the money comes in right away. Now, what you can do then is, as your business expands, you can spend more time gaining clients, and then you can hire people to do that work for you, either pay them as a contractor or pay them as an employee, either one, and your business can grow with a very, very low investment. Another one is coaching or consulting. If you have an expertise that's in demand out there, you can become a consultant. Now, a lot of people do that. A lot of military people, for example, when they leave the military, especially at their higher ranking, they end up going to work for a company that makes military hardware and acting as a consultant. That's just an example of taking all the skills and knowledge that you have in that field and then using it to benefit yourself without spending a lot of money there. Now, I have skills in a couple of areas because I've had businesses before, but I decided not to use them. I sold a business that I had for about 20 years in a big industry and decided that, that was, a good chapter in my life, but I want to do something different. And I ended up starting businesses doing something almost entirely different. Now, I learned a lot from those businesses, as some of you that I'm talking to have. For example, you may have learned a lot about managing a business or managing people. All of those skills can be employed depending on the type of business you want to start. Now, you may have worked for a big retail company. Maybe you were a store manager. Maybe you were working at the corporate office, but you've learned something about retail, and maybe you decide you want to do a retail type of business because you're leveraging your skills. But it's not necessary. You can start something entirely new. And as I said, for me, I wanted to do something different, and maybe you do as well. I've got a couple of things here. Larger businesses may take $100,000 to $500,000. Now, I would suspect this. That's not necessarily true because I don't have facts right here. I can do the research and get it, but, I'm giving this to you. I don't think as many people that start a business in retirement believe at least that they're starting a bigger business when they do. I think things just happen. They've got a good business plan, and that business plan takes them to a modest size or smallish type of business that they can manage, and then those businesses grow. So we'll talk about what happens if that were to happen, but that's not necessarily what you're planning on. For most of us, we plan on starting small and maybe growing. Not necessarily if you're in your 30s or 40s, you want it to get as big as you want. But in retirement, maybe you want to keep your hands wrapped around it, so you don't want it to get it too big. But the factors that influence investment costs are your business model, the industry, the location, the initial scale, as I mentioned, marketing and branding, licenses, and legal fees. And then we're going to give you a little bit more on the business plan itself. And I mentioned that it's really important that you develop a good business plan. So we have a real good section in here about the business plan. And not only do we have that section in here, but we also have sample plan for you. And we have a template for you to use in creating your own plan, which is, a good thing to do. Take your time on the plan. And by the way, plans can change, so it's not set in concrete. By the time you finish doing the plan, which shouldn't take you very long, actually, because they're fairly simple, you may want to go back and make some changes. 6 months after you start your business, you want to maybe go back and make some changes. And there's some good reasons to do a business plan, other than to keep you on track. If you're going to go out and do some financing, they're going to ask you for a copy of your business plan to see if you're actually on target with it. Now, we're going to talk about the exit strategy. I mentioned that a little bit above. I didn't use the term when I talked about the business getting larger. But look at it this way. So you're doing this after retirement, which means that your life expectancy at, say, 65 might be 30 years. It might be 20 years, depending on your family history. It's not the same as if you started in your 20s, where you've got decades and decades to go. So you need an exit strategy as part of your business plan at the very beginning. And what I mean by an exit strategy is that you will sell your business, transfer it, or close it at some point. And that point may be when your health declines, if it does. And while it may not decline to the point that you have to leave your business, you might get to the point where, okay, it's time to go out and smell the roses. All right, you've done enough of this, and now you just want to go and walk on the beach. You want to cut back the time. You don't want to do anything full-time. You just want to do it part-time, and it's time to transfer. So my thought for me is I have a son and a daughter. I want to try to give my businesses to my son and my daughter, and I want them to be involved. And my son is to some extent. My daughter is to some extent, not a lot right now, but that's good. They can work into it. And that would be a good thing for me on an exit strategy, which is how I have created mine. You need to create your exit strategy too. Now, you may have a business that's big enough to sell, and as I do, but I just thought I would just pass it along because I'd like to see them have a bit more security in their own retirement. But for you, it may be a business you can sell and make $100,000, $200,000, or millions of dollars, and that's your exit strategy. Now, I had an exit strategy with one of my businesses, my last business before I decided to kind of retire. And so I sold that business, but my exit strategy started years and years before. I decided what I wanted to do and how I wanted to close out my business, and this is when I was much younger. And it all fell into place because I worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. The buyer that I wanted, the company I wanted to buy it, they did buy it. And then I worked with them for a while, and then I transitioned into what I am doing now, which is the blog and many other things. So a good exit strategy tells you that, look, you're trying to start this business today, but what are you going to do with this business when some time happens that you just want to spend more time with your family and less time at that business activity? And that's what the exit strategy is. So we go into that in some detail about how to create the exit strategy. We're not just leaving you hanging here. So we talk about it a lot. And then the story of how I kind of transitioned is in here because, you can read article after article with somebody in their 40s trying to tell you what it's like to start a business after retirement. But, they're just kind of guessing at it. So I'm giving you my story and saying, look, if I did it, you may be able to do it. Now, we're not all the same here, so we're not marching in lockstep. But it's important that you understand that there are some things that you can do and that it's not that difficult because if other people have done it, you can do it too. Now, I want to get into a couple of things that people think about almost immediately when they talk about starting a business after retirement. And one of them is Social Security. Okay, so what about the impact on Social Security? All right, so if you start that business at age 67, 66, 67, whatever it's going to end up being, for full retirement, then you have no penalties to pay the IRS. You can make as much money as you want and still keep all of your Social Security benefit. If you are one of those people who take it at 62, you will pay penalty after penalty. It will just eat up your money. First of all, you're taking about a third less money by doing it at 62, and then the government's going to take nearly half of that money and keep it. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense for most people to take that money at 62, even if you're not going to start a business in retirement. But if you're going to start a business in retirement, I would strongly suggest that you not take Social Security until you're 66 or 67, because you might leave a company at age 60 and you've retired, or you worked for the sheriff's department and you have a retirement and you're retired at 60. And you are entitled to Social Security, but you decide, I'm going to start my business now, and I'm not going to touch that money until I'm 66 or 67 for the full retirement. And that's the best way to go. And then after you have reached your retirement age and you can get Social Security, that will help you. Maybe maybe that'll help you finance the growth of your business at that time. Or, depending on your situation at the job, you may want to stay on the job until you're 66 or 67 and start it. Or, what you can do is, if you're working still, you can do some things on the side. A side hustle, as the young people now are saying. Maybe you have a job and you're working a typical 8-hour-a-day shift, or Monday through Friday, and you might want to start becoming a blogger or a dog walker, or many of those things that don't require you to, buy a building and start construction and things like that. And you can do that while you're still working as basically a part-time job, if you will. And then when you retire, you can move into a full-time job or keep it as a part-time job. But Social Security is not going to hammer you for money after you have turned 66 or 67, depending on your age. So that's the best way to handle the Social Security. And of course, for many of you who are thinking about retiring early, and early I mean before age 65, and the reason I say age 65 is because that's the magic number for getting Medicare. And Medicare is very, very important because you need medical benefits when you retire, and there may be a gap. So if you retire at 60, you'll have 5 years where you're going to have to pay for your own insurance, and that can get very expensive. Maybe that's a good reason to start your business, is just to pay for your medical care for you and possibly your spouse. But after 65, you can relax because Medicare is a good insurance policy and it's reasonably priced. And you don't need to take your Social Security retirement benefit at that time. You can just apply at 65. So that may be a good target for some of you to retire at age 65, because if you're covered by a business medical plan, you can transition at age 65 without having to spend a good portion of your income paying for medical care. And then, of course, building the right team and scaling up. We're going to talk in some of the other articles about working with contractors and hiring employees, and that's something that requires a little bit of thought. If you're going to have your son or daughter or a relative work for you, you can have them work for you under certain circumstances as contractors. But before you scale your business to the point that you need to hire employees, that's where things get a little bit different and maybe a little bit more complicated. So I strongly suggest that if you do not need employees in your startup business, it's probably better for you to get a good start with your business without hiring them. And then you can work with contractors all day. You can hire a company that has people to do certain things for you if you want to. And then you can use family members. Another thing that people ask is that one topic is, do I need a partner in my business? And I have always been of the mind that the business has to transcend the individual's value. In other words, when I started my first business, it was a sole proprietorship. And then I started a bigger company. Well, it was going to be a bigger company. I created a corporation. And in creating a corporation, I allowed a family member to join me and a very good friend, and I gave them a minority interest in the business. And I'm telling you that what happened was I was able to sell my business because it wasn't me. Now, yes, I was the driving factor, no question about it, in the business to make it happen. But when the buyer was looking at it, they were looking at a corporation with employees. At the time, I had quite a few employees. And they were looking at the financial aspects of the business, and they weren't saying, hey, we're going to buy this business exclusively because of you. As a matter of fact, they were going to buy the business, and I was not going to stay on for a while, which was my plan, because I wanted to make sure that there was a good transition, having started the business. And I negotiated with them, and then they kept me on, and I stayed on for several years before I left. But the point was that they were able to buy the business because they could see the value in the business aside from the personality. Now, if I had started it myself and I was the sole owner of the business, maybe with my spouse, that's different, because the thing that they would think about is what happens when you leave? What happens to the business? If the business doesn't succeed when you leave, then it doesn't have the same value. So I'm telling you this just for you to have some consideration, especially for people who are retired. That means you're a senior generally, and that means that you probably won't be staying there for 40 years. So it's time for you possibly then to think about bringing in family members you can trust, and having those family members help you manage that business. And again, back to the exit strategy, maybe a good strategy is to have your son and daughter start in your business. Maybe they start part-time, but they're still there. Maybe they own part of your business. You might start the business as a limited liability company, which is fine, and that's a recommendation. You can always transition to a subchapter S or a C corporation. We talk about all of this, by the way, in our articles too. But at least you are building something that has a value that you can sell. Now, if your intention is to give it to your son or daughter, then that's not as important. But if you think you're building a business to sell it, it's somewhat important depending on the type of business. Now, if you are a financial consultant, for example, and you have 25 or 30 or 50 different clients, it's possible for you to sell that business. But what you're going to have to do is bring in a partner that has the skills where you can transition away. Now, I have a friend who is a CPA, and he started his business thanks to his father, who was also a CPA, and I've been with him for a long time. So he's looking at his retirement, which is not too distant, and he brought someone into his business that knows everything about the business. He's been working with him for years, and that person is going to end up buying the business from him, and he'll be able to take it forward because the clients know who he is. And that's what you have to think about if it's that type of personal service business. That's part of the exit strategy. It's also part of the ownership plan too, and your ability to build some value that you can get out of that business. So that's one of the things that you can do. And also, I talked about the giving back kind of thing, which, when you get a little bit older, you start thinking about things that just don't come up when you're younger. And one of them is, somebody helped me when I was doing this or that, and I would like to help people do the same thing. And I would like to help maybe some small businesses be able to get a good start. And so I'm going to do some mentoring for them. And that is what we call, giving back. And giving back is the same thing if you are bringing your family members in and you're teaching them the business because eventually you want them to take over the business. That's the same thing. And you can gain a great deal of satisfaction by doing that. That's something money cannot buy. So remember all those boxes I was telling you about? That's one of those boxes. And there is for those of you who have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's one of those college things that you learn. There's a scale, and basically it's a pyramid. At the bottom, it's all you can think about is food and clothing. That's the minimum thing. You are so desperate. That's what you're worried about. And then you step up and you get some housing, and you step up. Maybe you get some education. So the better you are off, you keep moving up that pyramid, and then the things at the bottom become less and less important. So, if you've earned a lot of money, you've got a good job, you've got a house, so you're not worried about the security issue at the bottom and those things, and you move up. And at the very top is self-actualization. And I bring this up because it's important, and you can't get that early in life. But later in life, self-actualization is where you can basically kind of stand back and look at the world and say, I would like to leave this as a better place than when I came into it. And so I'm going to help people do different things. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that, because I do it myself. Since I moved to the Mississippi Gulf Coast from California to pursue my retirement, which wasn't a retirement, I started working with several small business owners that were in the business of making repairs of some type, handyman type people, who were very good at the work that they did, but didn't know anything about the business side at all. And all they're going to do is just work every day and every day and every day. And they're not going to build up any retirement. They're not going to build up any stability. They're bringing in money. They're paying the bills, but it's not enough. So I took it upon myself to help them understand the need to create a real business. And that means, filing with the state. That means getting insurance. That means getting a license, contractor's license, and then on, so that they're in a website, for example, and creating a real business, and then doing invoicing and tracking their business. All these steps that we're going to go through in the articles here that they weren't doing. And now they understand. It's just become clear as a bell to all of them how important all these things were to build a viable business that will grow, because they had no plans. They had no goals. They had nothing. So I've been working with them for several years, and all of their businesses have improved quite a bit as a result of that mentoring help, and I gain tremendous pleasure from seeing that happen. I also get the opportunity to use them on different properties and see the quality of work that they do, and get good responses back from my clients who say, hey, this person does a good job, or that person does a good job. And so they're actually building something that is sustainable, and before they weren't. And that's the kind of thing that perhaps you can do, even if it's just family members. That's great. Some of you may not have the opportunity to do it. Some of you who have a lot of management experience, that means you started at the bottom, you worked all the way to the top, maybe for a company, and you understand all these things we're talking about here. And once you put them all together, you say, hey, you know what I'd like to do is I'd like to start my little business, whether it's dog walking or something else, but I'd also like to be a mentor. You can go to one of the local universities, and you can talk to people there. You can just rub elbows in your neighborhood. You'll find plenty of opportunities to do that if you want to. I also wanted to mention to you that you can continue to learn, as I talked about, going to the internet, but there are courses you can take at educational, junior colleges, for example, small community colleges, or you can take online courses and community workshops to gain more skill at that thing you want to do. Also, what it does is if you are able to leverage these new contacts, you want to continue to make contacts, because maybe the individuals who are also taking these classes are someone that can become a customer to yours. So we want to put you on a path to success, and one of the things we left in here was a quiz for you to take. And it's test your knowledge about starting a business after retirement. And that's, of course, after reading the article, too, Now, we already have, at this time, we've got 4 articles. The Ultimate Guide to Starting a Business After Retirement. You'll find that on retirecoast.com. Also, The Best Business I Can Start After Retirement. Now, that one starts getting into some detail. That's about the actual starting of the business, creating the, coming up with a name, and some more details on the type of business that you want to do. We give you a lot of suggestions, recommendations, different amounts of money you can earn, things like that. So by the time you finish that article, you should have a real good idea of what you want to do. Then the third one is starting a business after retirement, and that's our business plan. And that's something that we're going to get into, into the weeds on the business plan. So we're going to help you a lot with that, with templates and everything else. And then we're just going to take, as I said, bite-sized pieces, and we're going to go into all kinds of other things. We are also going to offer you in one of the future articles that'll be out in a few weeks after this has come out. And we're going to help you create an LLC agreement, obtaining a business name, filing for a DBA, filing the articles of incorporation or membership, and much, much more. Now, some of those things we're going to offer you are going to be at cost. We're still going to explain all the things that you have to do and what they are, but we can do these things for you. We have some arrangements with some companies we can create all of these things for you so that basically you can just sit at home. You don't have to run around and do it. You don't have to go searching for things on the internet regarding the actual mechanics of creating that business as a real business. We'll be able to help you even with a business plan and some other things. So that'll be in one of the articles. But we're going to continue to write these articles on specific segments of the business plan. We'll get into the regulatory side, for example, and we'll also get into the financial. That's the Article 4. That's the financial side. We talk about the money and the borrowing and all those things, and there's a lot there for you to take a look at. Then we'll get into the accounting side and setting up an accounting system for you, those type of things. So by the time you read all of these articles, which will take us a month or 2 months to write them all and get them out there, you'll be ready to start your business. You'll know what you want to do. You'll know when you want to do it. You'll know how you want to do it. And then all you have to do is just basically push the button and say, okay, I'm going to start tomorrow. And that's the whole point of this series that we have. So please come back to our podcasts. We're going to do some YouTube videos also. And again, we're going to write a number of articles and some ancillary articles too to give a little bit more detail on some side. And then all these articles are free for you. They don't have any advertising in them, except for the articles that offer services, which you can choose or not. You might find someone else that you want to do it with, but that's our opportunity to earn some income for taking the time to write the articles. And the other thing is that it probably won't pay even for that, but I feel good about writing the articles and the people I work with that give some input here as well. So thank you for coming, listening to our podcast, and I hope that you come back for future podcasts. We talk about a lot of other things other than starting a business as well, so listen to some of our previous podcasts. And we talk about retirement. We talk about coming and living on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, which is a great place to live, and it's inexpensive, and it's a good place to start a business, by the way, and much, much more. So thank you again for coming to Retire Coast Podcast.